You are listening to the Teach Middle East podcast, connecting, developing, and empowering educators.
Hey everyone, this is Lisa Grace. Welcome to the Teach Middle East podcast with Anne Palmer today as my guest, all the way from London, my hometown. Well, it's not a town, people, it's a big old city. And Anne and I are going to be talking about leading schools in the age of AI. And there's no better person to talk about it because she literally wrote the book about it. So it is my pleasure to welcome Anne Palmer to the podcast. Anne, welcome.
Oh, welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for inviting me into your space. I've listened to some of your previous podcasts and, this is going to be some journey this morning.
Thank you. So what I always like to do is I like to get the audience to know who I'm talking to so that they feel comfortable that I've chosen great people. I think they might trust me by now. Geez, if you don't trust me by now, people, or if this is your first time listening, trust me, I know what I'm doing. Anne is a real talent and a veteran in the education space. She's done loads of stuff, but I won't tell you what she's done. Why don't I ask her to tell us a little bit about her career, where it started, and how she ended up where she is now, writing a book about leading with AI.
Well, I know that we're going to be time limited on this podcast, so I'm just going to give you a very succinct version. My whole being really has been about leadership and education. I've been in education for over 35 years now, very grounded in the practical aspects, but also the strategic aspects. Throughout my career, I progressed. I did 4 headships in total, both at primary school level and at secondary school level. I've always had an interest in international education, doing things like the Erasmus projects, visiting schools abroad, looking at their systems, working with universities abroad. So my perspective really has led me into 3 areas of work, which include leadership, diversity and inclusion, and artificial intelligence. I'm also a trust board member. I'm a school governor. I'm also a trustee with a charity. Lots of other titles come with being in this space, and that includes being a fellow with the Chartered College of Teaching, one of the founding fellows, actually. And I tend to do a lot of my work around executive coaching. We work with international leaders, coach international leaders and principals and execs in the UK. I run a national award for anti-racism with many schools that partake of that work. Do some keynote speaking every now and then. My drivers at the moment really are that I often joke with people that I could really be sitting on a beach, maybe drinking a pina colada or 2 at the moment. But, when you think about our mission is with young people coming through, we have to have the eye on the space that we were born educators. We will always be educators. And it's really about leaving a legacy where we have impacted on people's lives. I was really pleased finally that, in 2022, my work was recognised by Her Majesty the Queen in terms of the impact that it's having. But no 2 days are the same. We are still having impact. And I'm just really pleased to be involved in the work that you're doing to promote AI, which will be really core and fundamental in the future of our young people.
Take me back to your headship, your last headship. What were some of your highlights during that role? Like things that you remember and smile about?
The thing that keeps you getting up in the morning with headship is actually focusing on the children. And I came into a really difficult school. I'd been told that it had had 7 head teachers in quick succession. But, I'm fundamentally a South Londoner. Something like that for me is a real leadership challenge. So, we did turn around the school. We were able to increase the numbers. What was, things that kind of stand out to me is really, yes, what the staff say, what the students say, but when you get messages back from the local community saying that school has really changed. And then you invite, it was a secondary school, you then invite primary heads in, which we did regularly, and they were able to see how their students had come to us and were progressing in a really, really strong way. So, I think working in really challenging circumstances and seeing the impact that you can have on children, all children, but particularly those that perhaps come from a disadvantaged background.
Yeah, South London is it's an interesting place. How has it changed over the years? I mean, you haven't been in headship for a few years now. How have you seen the changes in recent years? What's been happening? Because I'm out of touch a bit.
Well, I can look right across the spectrum from what we would maybe call the good old days to right through to now. And there are significant differences. I don't think we do enough of guiding our young people into the profession. And I will always call it the profession. Mental health, workload, just general well-being. Expectations are always high. We always, as school leaders, set expectations, but there always seems to be another layer on top of that, which sort of sees us with suspicion maybe perhaps of not working hard enough or not thinking big enough. I think head teachers and school leaders are under a lot of stress. I think the other thing is the collaborative aspect of the work, in that it's harder these days to collaborate and find the best practice, because schools work in silos. They work in what we call multi-academy trusts. So you know what's happening within your trust. Whereas in the past, you could have worked up and down the country and internationally to really look at best practice and share best practice, because, the children that may be educated in London are not going to be that different to children that are educated in Manchester. And if we look at them as global citizens, there's no reason why school leaders should not be collaborating up and down the country and forming real, genuine and impactful partnerships.
That's interesting, because somehow I thought collaboration across schools would have increased. But instead, you're saying to me that currently it's decreasing because of the proliferation of multi-academy trusts. Why do you think that is?
I think that, the model I believe is right, where schools within perhaps a trust support each other, school to school, peer support. But that just assumes that the best practice exists within those 5 schools, those 10 schools, those 60 schools. Whereas when I think it was David Hopkins that said that international leaders or strong leaders scan the global environment. They look outwards, they face outwards. Whereas the model that we have promoted for a period of time now is quite inward looking, and then you grab something from the outside, but you only use it for yourself, as opposed to seeing it as being part of a community. And it has felt like society has become really small mini communities that try to serve themselves.
I agree. I know the podcast isn't about this, but I'm agreeing with you in that society does start now to feel a little bit more cliquish. It's a them and us. We don't want anyone to come in. We want to shut our borders. We want to shut our doors. We no longer want to share. And I know there's a balance. You can't let everyone in, but letting no one in or sharing with no one doesn't benefit anyone at all. Let's shift gears, Anne. Let's shift gears. You wrote the book. Why AI? What's going on? I mean, you really did make a nice segue into AI, but from a nice perspective, because you're talking about it from a leadership perspective. Why?
So, I've been thinking about this, and what's really floated to the top of my thinking is that the analogy is I don't see myself as being a snorkeler. I see myself as being a deep sea diver. So if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well. I'm going to immerse myself in it, and I'm going to look at all aspects, all corners of that particular thing that I'm focused on. And this is what happened with artificial intelligence, because leaders and senior leaders, execs, and so forth have very little time. They have very little time to stop, to pause, to evaluate, to really do that bigger strategic thinking. And we know AI is on the horizon. We know it's here. It's not just on the horizon, it's here. And we know that global companies or institutions are doing some really great things around the world. But I just didn't see that happening in the UK. We do have a fairly archaic system, but one that is leading, hopefully now, through to more innovation. So I just wanted to be that person that took some of the strain, some of the stress, some of the strategic thinking off of our leaders to say, look, uh, there's only so much that you can do. Let me use my 30 odd years of experience as a board member, as an educationalist, as a learner, as a strategic thinker. Let me put it all together in one area. And the other thing, of course, is that when people think about AI, and I'm sure that you found this, Lisa, is that uh, they're either scared of it and they say, I'm not going anywhere near it, or they say, I just don't have the time. So that fear of AI it's got to be founded or unfounded, it's got to be founded somewhere. So I really wanted to take the pressure off of people so that if they are fearful, we're going to come out with some home truth where they can say, well, it's not as bad as I thought it was. And you put that learning ear on it so that they can apply it to their daily practice, but also to the vision of their schools and the vision of their organization.
It's interesting though, because a lot of the talk that we hear about AI is okay, the students are going to use it to cheat. Or how do we get the students to use it properly? How do we get the teachers to use it properly? But the fact is, for it to really take root, we have to get the leaders to use it properly, whether or not that we have to increase their understanding of AI, how it works, and then also how they can implement it in their role in different areas. I'm not sure how much is happening around training school leaders to use AI, but how should school leaders integrate AI without losing the essential human skills, if you like, or even use AI to enhance those human skills?
Yeah. We can never take AI for granted. We can never assume that the young people should experience our version of schooling. And that's the real fundamental mistake that we just haven't been able to shift. This is how it happened in my era, and this is how it's going to continue to happen. We've got to shake that off and do something a little bit differently, because actually we want to make life easier for our young people as they grow into adulthood. So I think that school leaders have to think of AI as being essential with a human touch. And what I mean by that is that you prioritize relationships, think about workload issues, work-life balance. We know that AI can automate tasks. So if we look at it through the staff lens, what can I move to the side to enable my staff to have a better work-life balance? I think that's the starting point. I think the other thing is that um, we know that we can look at AI through a human design. So it's designed to enhance, not to replace humans. And I think that's an essential thing that we need to think about. If we think of it as a tool, it is there not to replace humans, but to enhance what we are doing. I think also the fact that uh, we talk about ethics. We always talk about ethics with AI. And what we need to do is embed our ethical reflection into our work. So the more time that we discuss AI, the more time that we can start to raise how is it impacting on relationships? How is it impacting on trust? How is it impacting on well-being? Because what we feed into the system will be what we get out of the system. So we don't want a system built that is not focused on staff, that is not focused on vulnerable students. And the last thing that I would say is that emotional intelligence cannot be captured in AI yet. So we have got to champion that emotional intelligence, ensure that leadership, teaching, pastoral care, and all those other things become that lived experience that we can bring into the dialogue. Without that human voice, I don't think that AI would head in the right direction.
Interesting. Have you met any school leaders that are using AI?
I think what I've met are those that are thinking about their ed tech strategy. I've met those that are moving from tech company to tech company and taking bits and pieces. That's how I would phrase it. That might be useful for my school. Let's buy it and see how we get on. That might be useful for my school. So I'm seeing people, what I say, rather than stepping back and strategically thinking about what are the real needs of their establishment, they're taking bits of tech that they think will work, and then they're just throwing that into their school. And obviously there's massive implications. There's implications around staff understanding, staff training, the impact on the students, parents, fundamentally, and the education of parents. So, I mean, I know that I'm not here particularly to give advice, but that whole thing is, if you think about school improvement, we think about it very carefully, and we stage it, and we involve staff, and we talk to our students in the same way that we are implementing AI. That's essentially what we need to do. Don't run before we can walk, but make sure that you are implementing and thinking about things strategically.
So apart from them buying bits of tech and putting it in their schools, in their role as leader, have you seen any examples of them using it within their role? So not for the school per se, not handing it to maybe the teachers, etc., but them themselves using it within their own role.
I think that, and this might sound strange to say, but I'm going to say it. There's this very covert AI use. Sometimes people don't want to talk about it because anything associated with that is classed as cheating. They've not had the discussion. They're not going to say, I use Chat GPT, because they associate that with cheating. But when I speak to leaders, they might throw it in a conversation, but they don't throw it in as a strength. They throw it in and then they maybe giggle after or laugh afterwards, as if people don't know that I'm using it. And we can't go on like that, really. So I think those that are using it, and I've got people in my mind to give as examples, but people have come back to me and said, Anne, you introduced me to this little piece of software or this whatever. It's life-changing. Whereas I used to spend a whole morning focused on X, it's now taken me 30 minutes, and then I can polish things up. So I think number one is leaders are using it. Some, not a lot, and I think there was a percentage in the one of the educational papers about the percentage that are embracing it. But where they are using it, they are becoming stronger in themselves, but not necessarily, what do we say, putting down the ladder for others to climb up it and use AI in the same way. So one of the things I'll say that we are planning for the autumn term is to offer some hands-on free workshops for teachers. Doesn't matter what level of proficiency you are, but come in and try. Don't be scared. You're not cheating. It isn't an exam. It's a way of lessening your workload and getting you to understand that, put yourself in the child's mind, in the young person's mind, the kind of world that they're growing up in.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're saying that people are using it covertly, because the mindset here in the Middle East is quite different. People are embracing AI openly, a lot more. I think gone are the days when people would be hiding their AI use. People are using it openly, and people are experimenting with things. I call them the AI tinkerers. We had a conference in April where we had a couple of hundred, close to 300 tinkerers. People are just coming together from schools, heads of innovation, heads of tech, etc., and they're just talking openly. Oh, this is what we're trying. This is what's failing. This is what we're doing. We're hoping to do it again next year in April. And what I find as well is that there are ways that people are using it that others haven't thought about. And it's only when we share that people go, oh, we could do that with it, or we can do this with it. It's that tinkering, because it's new. We don't know everything that we need to know about it just yet, because also it's changing so rapidly all the time that when you think about, okay, I know this, something else comes up, you don't know about it. What are some things that people, I mean, you've written the book, but let's say you're talking to leaders, and they're willing to try things. What are some things that they could do with it that will help with their workload?
When you talk about this embracing of AI, I get a kind of Fred Astaire tap dancing moment, because I think, yeah, I want to be there. I want to see it. I get it. And I want, because I am very much committed to the education system in the UK. And it's interesting because they are having a global AI conference next year, or they are hosting a global AI conference next year, which I think is incredibly interesting. But what can they do with it? Okay. They can certainly lessen administrative tasks. They can certainly start to consider how AI is being used for the exam sector, for taking tests, for the market of tests. They can certainly be looking at how to quickly identify areas of development in students' work, particularly around exam papers and things like that. AI can do that a lot more quickly than adults can. They can be looking into their staffing and personalising CPD, for example. At the moment, we have the models where everybody comes together. The day is filled with the same theme. It doesn't matter what level of proficiency you're at, everybody does the same thing. CPD will become a lot more personalised. They can be thinking about, what does AI mean or look like in the curriculum? The old-fashioned, let me use that word, version is that IT sat on its side. The IT teachers are in that room, but actually we moved closer to, and need to move even closer with, the fact that AI should be in every single lesson. And that then moves you to think, well, if we are studying in this way, what kinds of professions are our children going to be going into? And how can we prepare them for that? Because we can't be preparing them in the same way that we did, when actually some of the jobs that we looked up to may no longer exist in the form that we have it. I think also that school leaders can be working more intensively with parents. And it's a big one, isn't it? Because we open out our schools and become social services and all kinds of things. But that partnership, we say there are three in the partnership, isn't there? There's the child, the parent, and the school. So if the parents are in there, we have a responsibility to be training parents around the safeguarding, the ethical aspects of AI, the pitfalls that the young people can fall into if they are skimming the social media platforms, all of those things. We used to do that when safeguarding became the big thing. We used to train our parents on what to look for on phones, on tablets, and things like that. Again, with AI, I think we're stepping it up, but the speed of which it's happening, we just need to do it more quickly. And I think the last thing probably, I mean, there's loads that schools can do, but the last thing I would mention is that if you're going to leadership down, as I would say, you need to leadership up. So what do your board of governors know? What do your trustees know? They can't, they are in overall charge of the vision and direction of the school. But if you fail to add them into that professional development model, then you're capping the potential of where your school could go. And sorry, just one more thing. Let's link to some really good companies that are doing things for the right reason. They are out there, and they can support schools with opening up their vision around AI.
It's interesting because as someone who has studied the area the way you have, what do you think are going to be some of the barriers for adoption? Like, what's going to stop all schools from adopting AI? And what should they be aware of? Like, what are some of the pitfalls as well?
Some of the pitfalls. One that leaders would probably home in on first is funding. Funding is quite restricted, or feels quite restricted in UK budgets, but I know that's not a global effect, but in the UK particularly, leaders will say, well, we want to, but we don't have the money. But what we need to understand is there's a replacement factor, isn't there? You're spending, say, 20K, 20,000 on something, when actually when you pull AI in, it might cost you 5,000 to do something in a slightly different way. So funding and the sort of pushing through funding into schools, because that will always be something that people talk about. I think another barrier is where do you start the training? And that's the big one, isn't it? If you don't put it as a priority, and when I spoke to some people earlier in the year, I said, look, schools are already putting in place 2-year budgets, 3-year budgets, and I am assured that AI will not necessarily feature in those budgets. So again, they're already setting themselves up to be 3 years behind because they've not really thought about putting in an investment of some description to cater for that. People will also find that their own fears become the barrier to what their school will do. Because unless you venture into this area, and you clearly have, I clearly have, and we know people that know. But if you think about the average leader, and I don't mean average by average, but your normal leader, how are they going to find the real experts? And what I'm really pleased about is that I was drafted in to work on the AI working party with the Chartered College of Teaching, Chiltern, and the DFE. So we've put modules out there to start that training piece. And that means even heads need to train. Even the heads need to train. So provide spaces, provide vulnerable spaces where even heads and execs and CEOs can say, look, I'm going to throw my hands up and say, I can't show my vulnerability in front of my 200, 300 staff. But what I can do in this space is have the ability to ask the questions that I need to ask. I think the other thing, of course, is that the fear of AI running away and leading the agenda. So what we're going to do is just going to ignore it. As I said at the very beginning, we are leaders, so we lead the developments. We don't let AI lead us. And heads really need to be have an understanding of that. I was speaking to a local authority the other day where the schools are working in clusters, and have essentially put AI into those clusters, and then they are talking to each other about what they're learning. That is just fabulous. That is another tap dancing moment for me. So the barriers, funding, training, conversations, being vulnerable, knowing what kit needs to be in place. I think those would be the main things.
It's interesting that you talk about the fact that some people are so afraid that they just ignore it. But I don't think AI or anything to do with implementing AI can be ignored, given the fact that industry is so far ahead that if we're preparing students to go out in the world of work and industry, then we're really doing them a disservice, because they're going to be prepared for something that doesn't exist anymore. And I think also parents and the students themselves are now becoming even more aware of the disconnect between school and real life, the real life as in work. So let me ask you this final question, because I think when we talk to leaders here in the Middle East about AI, they're a lot more enthusiastic, I would say. I think from our conversation, I can see that there's a disparity between what's taking place in the UK and what's happening here, especially in a country like the UAE, where the government has fully embraced AI and are even looking at putting it in the curriculum from early years all the way up. So what would be the ideal for you in the UK? Because I think I can see the divide. What would you consider to be the ideal? That's my last question. Like, what would you want to see happen?
So the fact that a global conference is taking place next year fills me with a great amount of joy. But in 12 months, there's so much that we could be doing. There's so much that we can be thinking about and implementing. My ideal would be that AI is integrated in all aspects of the curriculum. In order to do that, there are clear implications around staff training. And as I've already said, that as people implement, they are ensuring that the ethical aspects of the work are being considered, because we aim that no child should fall behind. And in current models, AI can assist in a variety of ways, special needs, gifted and talented, and so forth. So we should use that energy and that mission to make sure no child falls behind. What does that mean in my school and around my implementation? We've also got to understand that AI is not a replacement. Things that are still going to be needed, those human things around problem solving and teamwork and communication, much of what we see in the world that is going wrong is not about AI. It's about human interaction and emotional intelligence. So in whichever way we embrace this, I would like to see the fact that we do keep humanity at the forefront of the discussion. We've got to make the links with the right organizations to provide training, but also to provide hands-on experiences of what it really looks like, what AI tools, coding clubs, designing, thinking through, robotics, lots of work taking place, exciting work in the UAE, in China and so forth. How do we ensure that that is possible with the children that we all work with? And I think underpinning it all, what I really want to see is that there's a possibility here that we can remove any sort of equity disparities. And unless all people of all description engage with the AI developments and improvement and innovation, then it's going to be a very skewed perspective on what AI looks like as it's implemented. So ensuring that all people stand up to the challenge and say, no, I'm really going to learn more about this because we've got no choice. It's moving, it's happening, and everybody just needs to get onto the same page.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anne. That's a great place to end the podcast.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for listening to the Teach Middle East podcast. Visit our website, teachmiddleeast.com, and follow us on social media. The links are in the show notes.